Hey everybody. Just trying to get set up here. How's everybody's Saturday afternoon going? As I'm sure a lot of you are aware, I went to gyms and hey Debbie. Sharon, yes, as I'm sure most of you are aware, I went and got some rainbows from Jim's fish room. Pretty much rated him. The ride back home, I lost one of the Bellarise, which is the large rainbow in the picture down beside over this way. And he's still acting, oops, wrong direction, this way. He's still acting like he's not happy, like something's causing him some misery. And other than that, everybody seems to be doing all right. They're all basically trying their best to get along with him. And you guys are going to have to forgive me because I am not up to speed on rainbows yet. I'm learning, but I am not up to speed on them yet. The trifasciatus goiter river, which are the majority of the new ones that I got. I think Jim had 7 of them. They seem to be next in line in the pecking order after he is, and they're pretty much pushing the littler rainbows around, the praecox and the thread fins. So all in all, they're doing okay, but I set up one of the 29s or the 20 highs that I got from Jim, and I'm ready at any minute to pull his butt out of there. I've been treating them with Paragard because the one turquoise rainbow was evidencing what looked to me like pre-ick or stress-ick. So I didn't want to go full invasive on the medication, and I did decide to go with Paragard because Paragard's basically just oils, neem oil and pepper oil and some stuff like that. It basically causes them to shed and remake their slime coat over again, and that's a good protection against parasites, worms, flukes, that sort of thing. So they're undergoing the 5-day Paragard treatment right now. And if after that he's still not showing signs of settling down, then I'm probably going to pop his butt into the timeout tank. I set that 29 up right next to the my wife's 75 on that little table where our air pump was, and I set it up. I put substrate in it, and I put an undergravel filter and a 10-gallon sponge filter in it, and it's been up and running, and I got a little bit of a bacteria bloom right after I used Eco Complete, which comes with its own bio, and I got a little bit of a bloom Yeah, he's really being a whole lot of a bully. But several people have clued me in the fact that that yellow blaze on his forehead is a breeding type behavior. So he's obviously, in some kind of stress. Like I said, I'm treating them with Paragard right now. I noticed that he had some white feces. I'm not sure if that's a sign of internal parasites or whether it's just the stress of being moved. He's the biggest fish in the tank, so he's basically pushing everybody else around. Thanks, V-Stag. And I'm doing okay. How are you guys doing on this fine Saturday afternoon? Hey, Guppy Crib. So the 20 high is basically ready for him to go in it. So after this Paragard treatment's over, which will be after tomorrow, if he's still doing this bullying behavior, then we're probably going to put him in timeout in the 20 high. Like I said, I'm relatively new to rainbows. This is not a field where I have any real experience. I know that I have kept those thread fin rainbows in the past, but it's been a long time ago, and if I remember correctly, the one I got didn't last 4 weeks with me. Of course, my keeping skills 20 years ago aren't quite what they are today. So the fish, let's see, in the bag with the Bellerai, the one that's being the bully, Jim and I could only find 2 larger bags when we dug through his previous shipments. So we ended up putting 4 smaller rainbows, 2 Bellerai, and a Pleco in one of those bags. And I didn't get a lot of film while I was at Jim's. I goofed around and brought my new camera up there, but I forgot to charge the battery. So I was getting Jim to fiddle around with it, taking pictures to see if he could help me with the settings on it. And then when I went to use it, it was dead, and I goofed up and didn't charge the battery before I left. It never even occurred to me that I needed to do that. So all I had was my little cool pics. So that's what little footage of Jim that I got. I ended up doing that with my cool pics. So yeah, Victor. Part of me was cringing the whole time because I just really felt bad that I was taking Jim. I offered him twice as much money as he asked me, and he wouldn't take it. So, he was giving me a fantastic deal to begin with, and I tried to double the money I was giving him. It was all the cash I had, but he wouldn't take it, and I made him take some of it because I just wouldn't let him go. Let's see. It was Tuesday of this last week that I went up there. So I got them Wednesday morning and left his house not long after 8 in the morning and got back home about 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, something like that. And they've been in the tank since Wednesday at 6 o'clock. Now, we didn't really have enough insulated boxes to try to insulate those larger bags. So basically what I did was I left the substrata and about an inch of water in one of the 20 gallons that I got, and I put all of the bags down into that. And it was really cool that morning. I could see my breath up there in Ohio. I could see my breath, so it had to have been in the 40s. And so they probably got cold before they got put in that tank. And I didn't want to run my heater on the way home because I knew them being down on the floor underneath the heater in that tank in their bags. Hey, Racing, really nice video you had up, man, about MTS, that thing we all suffer from. So I'm afraid what happened to those 5 bags of fish that I got was that they got too cold, and then conversely, when I turned up my well, I didn't even really turn the heat on. I just left it on slightly warm, and just the motor engine heating up caused enough warm air to come through the system to start warming up the cab of the vehicle. And I'm afraid what happened is that it got too warm after being too cold, and that caused them a lot of stress. And when I got home and got them out of the vehicle, I had one dead Bellerai. The second one was dead in the bag, and I had one dead. We've still not identified the ones that Jim called unidentified. There were 7 Gorda River trifasciatus in one bag, and then a couple of littler rainbows that are less marked, and one of those was dead as well. Oh, I started a little early, Nisi. Welcome, Cichlid dude. So when I got these fish in the house and realized that there was a dead one in each bag, and especially because there was a dead, really large Bellerai in the bag with the rest of them, I plopped and dropped them. I was going to try to acclimatize them temperature-wise and all that, but as soon as I recognized that their bags were getting super ammonia from a dead fish in each of those rainbow bags, I dumped them. I plopped and dropped them. So their trip home with me and their introduction into this tank wasn't the best in the world. And so I think that the Bellerai, Bob said he's probably angry. You know, I think that he's exhibiting some breeding behavior, because he's in a tank with a bunch of larger rainbows now that he really wasn't in with before, and so that may be triggering some kind of breeding behavior / dominance. Something's going on with him. I talked to Jim on another live stream. He said that that neither one of those fish were ever aggressive in the tank they were in. They were in the top 125. They were above his turtles. Hey, King Lee, welcome to the stream. So, the situation with my rainbows is that on the whole, they seem to be doing pretty good considering what they've gone through. But they are having some issues. One, in the sense of, it looks like to me that they may have pre-ick or the beginnings of ick. And 2, this Bellerai is having a lot of issues. He's going through some kind of hey Priscilla, welcome to the stream. Yeah, don't try to watch on your phone while you're riding around. Okay, Nisi, we'll be talking for you. Hey, Amphibian and Fish Channel, welcome to the stream. So, on the whole, they're doing all right. It looks like to me, in the final analysis, I lost 1 Bellerai, 1 unidentified rainbow, and 2 shrimp in the process of moving all these fish. and I got a slew of endlers. I probably got 20 endlers. I probably got, I initially said 50 shrimp, but the more I've looked, it's probably more like 30 shrimp that I've got that Jim had in 2 separate tanks. And I think all I've lost is 2 of them. Now I do have a large red, cherry red female Neocaridina shrimp that came, and as soon as I did the acclimation to them and put her in the tank, she started swimming around in circles and looked for all the world like she was blind, and then she would stop and lay on the bottom, and I thought she was dying, so I'd get the forceps and go to pick her up, and she'd start swimming again and right herself and act like a normal shrimp for a little while, and then she'd start swimming in circles again. I finally got my shrimp net out and coaxed her into it and put her in the timeout tank, the quarantine tank that I had just set up and just gotten to season in the sense of the bacteria bloom came and went away. I set that tank up with an under gravel filter, a 10-gallon sponge, and a 20-pound bag of Eco Complete. There was already some gravel in the tank with a little bit of water, and I left that, hoping that some bacteria had survived. And then I took the sponge on the canister filter in my wife's tank and squeezed it out in that tank. So it just put a layer of mulm over everything, and got another bacteria bloom after that. And when that cleared up, I went ahead and put that shrimp in that tank, and she has acted like she is doing better in that tank. I'm not sure why she would do better on, that's basically 3 different water parameters that she's been hit with in the past 5 days, because I had 2 bags of shrimp. The shrimp I got from Jimmy were in 2 different bags, and I wasn't thinking about it. Yes, Debbie, if a sponge filter is full of biobacteria and you pull it out and squeeze it into a new tank and then put that sponge down in the tank, or have another sponge in the tank, that mulm will gravitate towards that sponge filter, or gravitate towards, like I've got the under gravel filter set up, it will pull it into the substrate and into that filter, and it will allow that bacteria to reestablish itself, and it will cycle a tank very quickly. That's how all these guys, like the setups that they do at like Chicago, when all these fish sellers bring all of their stuff in, that's how they get away with setting up a new tank and cycling it quickly enough to allow them to put fish in that tank without the fish being affected by, bacteria bloom or not enough bacteria to deal with their situation. It's not a seasoned tank. There's a big difference between a tank that has seasoned. Yes, it would, Debbie. Any kind of mechanical filter material, ceramic rings, lava rock, sponge, filter floss, any of that stuff that has active bacteria on it, if you take it out of the tank it's in or out of the filter that it's in and rinse it out real good in another tank, it will jump start. Now you can also use the over-the-counter stuff, as long as it's got the right bacteria, the right nitrifying bacteria in it, and it behooves you to do some research and find out which ones will really help your tank, because some of them have stuff in it that's really not going to aid your tank. But the ones that have the right nitrifying bacteria, nitrosomus bacteria in them, safe start, there's a bunch of them that will help also seed your tank. How good they do it, I can't really tell you. It's kind of a mixed bag. But yes, if you've already got a aquarium up and running that's been running for several months or a year, then that sponge filter in that tank is a wealth of the proper types of bacteria that your tank needs to get a good jump start. Now, you're also taking a chance of transporting flukes, cilia, any kind of pathogen that's in the water in the tank that you're using. Hey Rob, welcome to the stream. Any kind of pathogen or problem that's in the tank that you are getting the sponge filter or the filter material from, you are also going to transport that most likely into that new tank. So, you know, it's really helpful, but it can also be problematic in some ways as well. Now, if there are no fish and if there are no food sources in that new tank, then most likely flukes or anything that has a short life cycle will probably die before you ever get a chance to put a fish for it to infect back in there. And things like hydras and planaria, stuff like that, there won't be anything for them to eat, really. So a lot of times those will starve to death on their own. Yeah, I agree, Rob. It is good to see racing around. His latest video was really nice. I really enjoyed his take on MTS and his explanation of buying used tanks and what to look for and why you need to look for it. I thought he did a really great job. So people, if you don't know Racing's Natural Aquariums or you're not subscribed, I would definitely recommend checking out Racing Natural Aquarium. You're more than welcome, Racing. I think your tanks impressed me with their naturistic stylings as much as anybody's do, Racing. I think you managed to, you seem to have a real green thumb, and you seem to have a real what's the word I'm looking for? Effective way of setting up your tanks. I really like them. Hey Joel, welcome to the stream, man. How's everything down in Kiwi land? Debbie says, Nisi, I haven't even taken a picture in probably 6 years. New camera has been sitting unopened in the box for 3 months. I will get into it this summer when I have time to play around with it. Man, you've got some real patience, Debbie. I couldn't stand to have a new camera in a box for 3 months. It'd tear me apart. Yeah, I hear you on that, Racing. I can't do near as much gardening as I used to anymore either. My back just won't let me do it. Hey Valley Fish, welcome to the stream. Yeah, Guppy Crib, that'll work just fine. There's not that much beneficial bacteria living in the water, although there is some, so you can use a little of the water from a tank. But the gravel, the first inch of gravel from the substrata and a sponge filter are perfect. they'll jumpstart it pretty fast. Hey DPK, welcome to the stream. How's everybody's Saturday going? Aha, Racing's giving up his secrets. Since he changed to H2O vital root tabs, his jungle has boomed. Aha! Maybe that's what I need to do, is get a hold of H2O and get him to send me some of those. I hear you can make those root tabs yourself if you know what you're doing. The one thing that's always kept me away from them is how ridiculously expensive they are sometimes. Oh my gosh. $7.50 for 20 tabs, not bad. And I can see the results. So I don't really have an axe to grind today. I just wanted to, I titled my stream Rainbows and Unicorns to talk about rainbows, and unicorns are, of course, you guys and your questions. So we can talk about rainbows. Maybe you guys can teach me something about rainbows, or we can just ask questions, or whatever topic you guys find. Debbie says old school is the best. Knowledge from experience. Yes, I mean, I'm not old school enough to not be willing to learn new things. I think that when you quit learning, you're dead inside already. So you always need to be open to new knowledge and to new experience. But I think that a lot of good stuff gets left behind because everyone is trying to do the new stuff, and they're not really paying attention to what worked 20, 30, 40 years ago. So I think it's best to straddle both. Victor says, Dwayne, I made a small do-it-yourself Tupperware filter with pump. How long do you think crushed coral will last? If I add that to filter help buffer pH, I am using RO water and equilibrium to remineralize. Victor, if you're using RO water, my experience with RO water and calcium is that when I set my 110 up, I scraped and scraped and scraped on it, and I did not get it to, hang on, phone's ringing. Oh, sorry about that. My wife was sleeping, so I didn't want to make the phone wake her up, but too late, it woke her up. So I don't think that, I was talking about my calcium scale in my 110 that I was having so much trouble filming through when I first got my tank up and running and started doing this. Using RO water in that tank melted all that scale. I didn't even have to scrape it off. The RO water eventually melted it all off the glass. So using RO water is going to break down calcium that's in your tank. So using RO water over crushed coral will probably cut the amount of time that it lasts in half, let's say, and that's just a guess on my part. So I'd watch it. When you start seeing it really break down and, parts of it get soft, then you probably might think about changing it out of there. It's not going to last near as long as it would if you were using tap water that already had some calcium in it. DPK says, hi Racing, I found out the disease in hamster urine. It's called lymphotic meningitis, and it can wipe out a fish tank. Well, that's good to know. I'm not fond of using tanks that have held other pets in them for my fish tanks. And it's amazing how easily pathogens like that, and I don't know this pathogen at all, can survive being bleached or hydrogen peroxided or hot watered or many different things that you would think would clean out a tank. It's amazing how well these creatures are designed to avoid being wiped out. The only thing I know to liken it to is, if any of you know, in the old days we used to have a lot of problems with bagworms and trees, and they made sprays that you could use to kill the bagworms, but they would make their bags, the netting that they had woven around themselves, so heavy that none of the pesticide would get in there to kill them. So people finally figured out that they could use soap and spray the bags with soap, and that would break down the defensive capabilities of the soap. I mean, of the netting, the bags that they had around them, and then you could spray them with the pesticide, and it would get to them and kill them. There are a lot of creatures, disease, pathogens, that's sort of stuff. Hey, Raymond the Fish Fanatic, welcome. That sort of stuff, sometimes you have to use something to break down the pathogens' natural defenses, so that something like bleach or hydrogen peroxide or alcohol or whatever you're trying to use. Yeah, April, I know. I used to have to do that too. And welcome to the stream. So, some people use salt to break down the natural defenses of things like ick, and it can be highly resistant to treatment. And some use salt, some use heat. Methyl blue is also used in an old school fashion. They would use methyl blue to break down the defenses of a pathogen and then treat the tank and kill whatever it was, like Columnaris, like Lucas went through. I recommended first that he use furon and methyl blue, because that was the old school method of the methyl blue breaking down the Columnaris natural defenses so that the furon could get in there and kill it. And I may not be explaining this exactly correctly. Someone with this might be something that you need to research yourself and get to the bottom of exactly why one product is used in conjunction with another. I know it's to break down the defenses. What the defenses are exactly, I can't. I've read several different versions of this, but I think that's an effective plan of attack against some pathogens. That's why a lot of people use salt and heat to kill ick, because the heat speeds up the life cycle of the free swimming stage of ick. In other words, ick forms a cyst on your fish, then that cyst matures and breaks open, and a free swimming stage comes out and is loose in the tank, swimming around looking for a fish to infect. So the amount of time that free swimming stage is in the water looking to reinfect fish is increased by the heat. In other words, the heat speeds up the life cycle so that it has less time in its free swimming stage to reinfect fish, and by naturally it won't reinfect as much that way. And then you add salt to it, and it breaks down the natural defenses of the ick itself, and that causes it to die quicker. Yeah, April. Charles is really good with medications. That's why I recommended the Handbook of Fish Diseases to him because he really absorbs that stuff well, and I'm really happy to try to help him gain more knowledge in the hobby because he absorbs it really well and recognizes. Yes, Joel, there is a marine ick. I have never had any experience with marine aquariums, so I can't speak to anything marine other than the stuff I've just learned by looking at other things and doing research on other things. I know that this Paragard that I am using will also work on marine ick, and Paragard is not really a medication in the sense of, an antibacterial or any of those kinds of medications. Paragard is a collection of different kinds of oils that strengthen the. There's Charles. So I wasn't the one that turned you on to the Handbook of Fish Diseases, Charles? Oh, you just keep knocking down my the struts that are holding me up, Charles. And here I thought I turned you on to such great information. And welcome to the stream, Charles. I guess you must have heard me talking about you, huh? Basically, I've done my rainbow rant, so I'm open to questions and whatever topics you guys want to delve into. We're into the unicorn part of the stream now. Rainbows and unicorns. Well, I'm glad you got a hold of the Handbook of Fish Diseases, regardless of who turned you on to it, Charles, because I think it's an excellent book. Yes, and that's because it's written by my favorite author, Wayne Liebel, who I have met and listened to at length in several different occasions and actually got him to sign my book. Wayne Liebel has always been kind of a, a lot of these guys devote their entire lives to fish keeping and have buried themselves in it up to the neck and keep working it down into it up to the eyeballs over and over and over again. Wayne has never been quite like that. Wayne has always been kind of smacks into the hobby and then bounces off and smacks into the hobby and bounces off. But he is excellent. He's got an excellent point of view, an excellent grasp of the subject. Yeah, I've seen different kinds of reviews racing on that Nat Geo Biomedia, but yes, but it's been longer than recently. It was like 3 years ago, wasn't it? Or 4 years ago? Guppy Crib, 125 gallon would be a perfect tank for rainbows, although it is a little taller than it is across. So yeah, I'd say you could put a giant school of rainbows in a 125. And yes, I will have an opinion, Debbie, but it's not necessarily the best opinion. You guys should always take the things I say with a grain of salt. Rainbows are an area that I am not an expert in at all, just like shrimp is an area I'm not an expert in at all. But I'm learning, I'm studying, I now have them and I'm keeping them. So I'm learning too. 90% of the time when I'm asking questions and talking to people on these forums and different things, I'm trying to learn too. Yeah, DPK, it's autocorrect is a bear sometimes. This Bellerai and several of the unnamed rainbow species that I've got that you're looking at on this background right here that I got from Jim, they were all in a 125 too. I have set up 2 of them, Valley. I got 3 tanks and I've got 2 of them set up. I set up the 12-gallon rimless Mr. Aquaman tank that Kelly Kapowski was in, which I am calling the Kelly Kapowski Memorial Tank. It has 20 Lucas's Endlers in it and about 30-something shrimp that are also from Lucas. And I set up the 20 high, 20 long. I'm not sure exactly. I'm guessing it's about 26 gallons. It's almost like a 29, only I don't think it's quite that tall. And it may be a 29. I set that one up as a quarantine tank or a timeout tank to have it ready for this Bellerai if he doesn't settle down. Quit bullying everything in the tank. As soon as it's happily cycled, I'm going to drop his butt in it if he doesn't settle down. Oh, I don't know that I'm too modest, Debbie. Sometimes I'm a legend in my own mind. I've gotten to the age now where I just don't, things that affected me long ago don't really faze me anymore. That's one of the few good things about being old. You don't give a crap anymore about some stuff. Offending people or pissing people off doesn't bother me near as much as it used to. Used to, I was pretty politically correct, or tried to be, and now I just, sometimes my mouth gets ahead of my brain. Oh. To the best of my knowledge, DPK, those are goiter river trifasciata. Now, there's a bunch of them that look the same, so that might be a bad call on what they are, but I think that is what they are. And all I got out of Jim was Aussie rainbows. But there are about 5 or 6 Aussie rainbows that look just exactly like that, or very close like that. Nisi says she's offended by my non-offendedness, and she's just going back to her reports now. Hey, Sergeant Tank, how are you guys doing, man? You get your fish store stuff done? I'm really happy, Jeremy, that you're getting a lot of that stuff from Jim, because at least I know his fish will be well cared for. And all of my greed and thinking, yeah, DPK, I actually believe that I've gotten a bunch of spawning behavior out of these rainbows, and that they are trying to spawn. Raymond the Fish Fanatic, the plants that my wife got in that contest, which was a shock to both of us, Some of them are doing really well, and some of them are not doing so well. A bunch of the stem plants were basically just clipped off pieces, and some of them are not doing so well. I'm not sure whether it's the tank or the light or what, but they're just not doing really great. So if you pay attention and when you're looking at this tank, you can see some of them are melting. 3 stores? How much have you spent, Jeremy? How much have you spent in the stores? You're gonna be too broke to pay Jimmy for Kang's discus, and Kang will end up with them anyway. I lusted after those discus, man. You know, I've watched them plenty on the videos that Jim has put out. Those videos do not do those discus. They look like that their skin is made from velvet. They are gorgeous discus. If I could have figured out any way to carry them off myself, I would have. If I'd had any kind of tank set up that I felt like I could put them in, I would have carried those off myself. They wouldn't have been there for you guys to argue about. I know, Jeremy. We're teasing you about it, but I'm glad you're getting them, and I hope you do get them to breed and give Kang a lot of little discus fry, because I think he deserves them. Jimmy and I were talking about his drive, and driving those 2 discus up to King Lee was going to add 12 hours to his drive. Yeah, racing, sometimes you're right. If you're not ticking people off, you're not doing it right. Yeah, I think anymore that people fall into spectrums where unless you're shaking up their paradigm, that you're probably not going to get them to learn much anymore. They get ensconced in their own cocoons, and unless you can really shake them out of that reverie, you can't really get them to learn a whole lot. Well, Jeremy, I'm looking forward to the bagging videos and the tank setups and all that's going to come out of Jim's divesting of fish. There is so much moss in that tank, DPK. DPK says I can put a breeding mop in there with them and they'll spawn on it 3 or 4 times a day. They've been doing all kinds of spawning, and there is so much moss in that tank. I have a feeling I'm going to get fry anyway, whether I put spawning mops in there or not. Debbie, I echo. Debbie says, discus are so beautiful, but I am afraid to keep them. My water is high pH and hard. I don't want to bother with RO water. It's not as bad as it used to be, Debbie, because a lot of people, like the stinker discus and a lot of the discus salespeople, recognize that people. Hey, Tankhead, welcome, man. Abel, I was sorry to hear about your situation. I'm glad that you are bettering yourself by going to school. I think that's something that no one can take away from you, is knowledge that you gain in school, and that it will probably help you in the future in one way or another, either through income or just how you feel about yourself because you've learned something. I hope you know that we support you. Yep, Charles is making my point for me that discus these days are acclimatized to higher pH and higher TDS. It's not like we're dipping these fish out of the wild rivers and dumping them straight into our hard TDS and pH. They have been acclimatized and slowly brought up to speed. Charles, in the old days, they had a lot of problems with wild-caught discus, with their ovipositor ducts getting calciumed over, and the females couldn't lay eggs because that orifice had gotten so small that the ovipositor couldn't come out, and they couldn't lay eggs, and they would bind up inside from the eggs. But yeah, I think in this day and age, discus are almost as happy in hard water as they would be. Yes, I think that's completely true. That's what these guys are doing. They're bringing fish in from the wild, just like your Altums, and holding their hand while they take them through the acclimation process to get them up to a higher pH and a higher TDS. They don't do it instantly. If you take a fish that's living in 4 pH and 18 TDS and drop it straight off into a tank full of 8.0 pH and 300 TDS, that fish is not going to adjust. Not only is it not going to adjust, but diseases that it has never built up a resistance to will hit it suddenly, because those diseases couldn't survive in that 4 pH, but they can survive in that 8 pH. So they have to really work with them slowly to get their resistance built up to diseases, and get them amphibian. We're just basically shooting the shit right now. I've done my rant about rainbows. Well, Debbie, that's not to say that they aren't demanding. They are a demanding fish in the sense that poor water quality will affect them very intensely, that they will sulk, they will hide, they will get parasites. They are a demanding fish to keep. Don't kid yourself about that. It's just that it's possible now to keep them in pHs and TDSs that a long time ago you couldn't get. Hey, Matthew. Yeah, you can get them all over the place now. Discus Origins on Aquabid has some incredible discus. That's the guy I got my L260 Wildcaughts from. Jack Watley discus. Jack Watley was the end-all and be-all for discus for a long, long time in this hobby. Guppy crib, I do not know the best parameters for rainbows. Jim had these rainbows in almost 400 TDS, and he was running them at about 76 to 78 degrees. So I just tried to match that. The rainbows in my wife's tank is running about 380 TDS, and it is running about 74 to 75 degrees. Abel, you take care of yourself, man. You worry about your family and your life. We'll be here when you get back. The hobby's not going anywhere. Matthew is asking Charles who is the best discus seller in his opinion, and I'm interested to hear his opinion. But I'm going to offer up that cat that used to work for Stinker Discus, that came to New York and set up his own discus hatchery and warehouse. I can't remember what his name is. Maybe Charles knows him. I think Uncle Sam is in California, and the guys that Joey has done a bunch of stuff with. I can't remember. Charles, do you know that guy I'm talking about? The one that's in New York? Discus Wally or Discus something is what they call him. Debbie is asking, do you treat discus with meds on a regular schedule for prevention? And if so, what meds? I will let Charles answer that question, but I would put my personal stamp on it by saying that I have always tried to avoid heavy medication. I know there's a lot of people that believe that they should immediately medicate and medicate a lot, but I have always tried to avoid using stressful medications whenever I could. I guess it comes from being old school, because back in the day, the medications were only slightly less dangerous to the fish than they were to the pathogens, and treating fish was a risky business. The cure was almost as bad as the problem was a lot of the time. Hey Corona Ken, welcome to the stream, man. Thanks for stopping by. Debbie, if you were to ask Corey what he would use as a prophylactic treatment, it usually, whenever I've asked him about something, his normal answer is erythromycin and general cure that he uses in conjunction to try to knock out original issues when the fish come in. So I'm guessing if you ask Corey, that would be his answer. Yeah, Charles, I would have to agree that over-treating fish with medications is more likely to create a medication-resistant bacteria or disease or pathogen or creature than it is to do good. So I've always tried to go with a small stick, instead of bringing in the big guns right away. I've always tried to use lesser things like this Paragard. Paragard has gotten really mixed reviews. You know, some people said it doesn't do squat for them, and some people swear by it. So anytime there's a medication that is not a heavy form of chemicals, I tend to go for it instead at the beginning, instead of a heavier medication, to try to do less damage to the fish in my tank. Yeah, Charles, I really like that you brought up the hero fish strategy in your last live stream. I was highly encouraged to see someone use that. That's not something that most people talk about. That's not something that most people advocate, and I can't really understand why. Debbie, I can walk you through my understanding of the hero fish strategy, and I've gotten my recognition of it through reading Diana Wallstadt's books and talks and articles that she's written. And basically what the hero strategy is that once you have quarantined and treated your new fish, and you don't feel like you're recognizing any issues that they have, that even then, these fish that you have brought in new may still carry some pathogen disease that they have built up a huge resistance to, so that when you finally decide, okay, I don't see any more problems in this tank with these quarantine fish. It looks like they're all doing fine. They've been through all my treatments. So now I can put them in the tank with all my other fish. But there is a problem with that. And the problem is that the fish you already had may have never been exposed to something that the new fish have a high resistance to. That these new fish are not exhibiting signs of whatever it is that they have this great resistance to, because they have that resistance. And yet they may still be infected by it. It may still be in them. So that when you put a group of previously quarantined fish in with a bunch of fish that you already had, suddenly these fish that you already have may start exhibiting signs of that disease, because they do not have an immunity built up to it. They do not have the resistance built up to that disease. So the hero strategy is to take, instead of taking all your fish out of your quarantine tank and putting them with all your other fish, take one fish out of all your other fish tank and put it in with the quarantined fish, and see if that fish starts exhibiting signs of some issue that you weren't able to recognize before. And that is the hero fish strategy. Now, it takes a lot longer. Your quarantine process is probably going to take you 3 or 4 months instead of 1 month or 2 months. So not a lot of people like that idea. But the truth is, it's the canary in the coal mine scenario. That canary is going to die a lot quicker under bad air issues than the miners are. So it's good to carry that canary with you, because when it starts squawking and dies, you know it's time that you better get out of there. And in the same sense, rather than lose a whole tank full of fish that you've had for a long time, it's a lot better to lose one, that hero fish, to find out whether there is still going to be some bad issue, than it is to lose all of them. I've heard a lot of people say, I've heard Lucas say especially, that whenever he tries to combine two different group of shrimp, that one or the other always seems to kill off all the others, in the sense of something that different group of shrimp has developed an immunity towards ends up killing off the other colony of shrimp. Or in some sense, that when you combine two different things, a lot of times you lose one or the other in that process. So that kind of is where the hero fish system comes into play. Rather than lose a whole colony, you might just lose one fish and learn that you're never going to be able to put those other fish in with all the fish that you had hoped you were going to be able to put them in with. Okay, guys, I've been running over an hour, and I've got some stuff that I need to get done. So I'm going to close it down and make way for others to live stream. I don't know whether Bob's going to be live streaming today or not. I'm hoping he's out hiking up the side of a mountain somewhere. But I'm going to go ahead and shut it down. Hope you guys all have a good Saturday. Thanks for coming to the stream.